Hi, today we're going to talk about positive and negative reinforcement. We're going to talk about punishment. We're going to talk about positive and negative punishment. And we're going to watch a clip on the Big Bang Theory. So, without much else, let's get into it. So, there's a chart that we are going to use in class on positively and negatively reinforced behaviors. Go ahead and get this chart down, and we'll go through each step along the way. So on the left-hand side, these are going to be our main questions that we're going to answer, and then this part up here, we're going to talk about whether or not this is dealing with our positive or negative behaviors. So in terms of the reinforced subject, for positive, they gained what they wanted and will do it again. On the next slide, we're going to go through an example of a story, and this should make sense here in a little bit. But whose behavior, who basically got what they wanted, and because they got what they wanted, they will do it again. In terms of the negative reinforced subject, who avoided something, who generally avoided a negative aspect of some sort of behavior, and however they were able to avoid it, they'll do that same action in the future to try to avoid even more confrontation. So in terms of the reinforcer, this is the thing that is actually gained. So what did the reinforced subject get by doing whatever it was? So what did they gain out of it? If you ended up removing this reinforcer, eventually it will lead to extinction, and extinction will mean that they won't ever do that again. In terms of what's the negative reinforcer, what was the thing that was actually avoided? And if that thing is present, it's going to serve as punishment. And so how can we avoid this particular thing? So what was the thing that was avoided? In terms of what was the positive reinforced response, it's the action that leads to the gaining of a positive reinforcer. So what did they do? What did the reinforced subject do, the positively reinforced subject do, to get the thing that they wanted? Okay. In terms of negative, what did the negative reinforced subject do to avoid the thing that they wanted to avoid? So what was the action that leads to the avoidance of the negative reinforcer? So now that we have this, you guys go ahead and pause this, go back through it, do whatever you need to. Just make sure that you get this chart down. You're going to refer back to this chart in the next few days. I know you will kind of refer to it in our next story, but your assignment in the upcoming days will also have this or use this chart. So here's the story. Consider the case of Tina, who hates liver and is served it for dinner, a thoroughly repulsive experience. She whines about the food and gags while eating it. At this point, the mother removes the liver. This is basically the same story from the textbook. I just added in Tina. Why did I choose Tina? I don't know. Actually, I was kind of thinking of Tina, the llama from Napoleon Dynamite. I don't know why. I probably should have changed the liver to quesadillas. But whatever it is, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you need to watch the movie Napoleon Dynamite. It's one of the worst, best movies I think I've ever seen. There's no point to it, but I just kept watching it. Why, I don't know. So take out a sheet of paper, answer these questions as we go through. Feel free to pause this. And so let's ask the first question. Whose behavior was positively reinforced? So who basically got what they wanted out of this situation? And the answer is Tina. Tina got what she wanted. Whose behavior was negatively reinforced? Who got to avoid something? The mom. Now, some of you may have said that, well, Tina was also negatively reinforced because she avoided the liver. And I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you. However, in the way that this story is set up, it is set up purposely for both positive and negative behaviors. So in this particular situation, whose behavior was negatively reinforced? It was mom. Next question. What was the positive reinforcer? The positive reinforcer was not eating liver. What did the girl gain? What did Tina gain? She basically gained the fact that I don't have to eat my liver. Okay. What was the negative reinforcer? What did the mom avoid? The whining. The mom basically avoided the mom basically avoided Tina's whining. What was the response that was positively reinforced? This was the whining. So in the future, because Tina doesn't have to eat liver anymore, now whenever presented with something that Tina wants, she's just going to whine even more because at some point in time, somebody gave in. What was the response that was negatively reinforced? Basically, what did the mom do to avoid the whining? Yeah, the mom gave in. So now we have a kind of a dilemma, and this is where we get into different parenting styles and all this other stuff. But from a psychological point of view, the kid, because the kid whined and basically got her way, that's reinforcing the behavior of whining. You're going to have more whining if you keep rewarding the child every time that they whine. You're like, please just stop. I don't want to hear your whining or listening. Fine, here's a candy bar. Go away. Stop the whining. Well, all you just did is basically give them permission to whine again in the future. Now, as from a psychology standpoint, that doesn't make sense. As a parent, and you have that kid that, no, please just stop. We're out in public. Do you have to be throwing a fit right now? Take anything. You are embarrassing me. Take the candy. You want gum? Take the gum. I don't care right now. Please stop whining. But what the parents don't realize is in the long run, they're giving in to this child who is putting in their mind, hey, anytime that I want something, all I have to do is throw a little bit of a tantrum and I kind of get what I want. And so parents are kind of giving in and they're kind of causing some of that behavior. I know that happened with me, with all three of my kids to some degree or another. And at some point in time, knowing what I know about psychology, I didn't necessarily care. I just wanted them to stop. So that's kind of the situation that we're in terms of positive and negative reinforcement in terms of behavior. So now we're going to look at what reinforcement is. This should be reviewed based on previous videos, but what is reinforcement? It's used to help increase the probability that a specific behavior will occur in the future. And that can be through positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement will make sure that that behavior will happen again in the future. Same thing with negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement is the withdrawal of something, but that will also increase the likelihood that something will happen again in the future. Results in a behavior occurring more frequently in the future. So if we take a look at the kid that's throwing a tantrum in the store because they're not getting the toy or the candy bar that they wanted, you giving in is basically going to incentivize them to do that behavior more in the future. So, what exactly is positive reinforcement? This works by presenting a motivating or reinforcing stimulus to the person after the desired behavior is exhibited, making the behavior more likely to happen in the future. So positive reinforcement is giving them something that they want after they do the desired behavior. You're training a dog to sit. You tell the dog to sit, the dog sits, you give them the treat. That's positive reinforcement. Okay? Some examples. A mother gives her son praise for doing homework. The kid does their homework. Mom says, hey, good job. That's positive reinforcement. The young boy receives $5 for every A he earns on his report card. I don't know about you. I've never received any sort of grades or never received any payments for every A that I earned. Not directly. My parents just kind of thought that it was assumed, required, and so I kind of like to please my parents in that regard. So I tried to get as many A's as I could, even though I wasn't necessarily paid directly. But that is something that does work for certain kids in certain situations. But the young boy receives $5 for every A that he earns on his report card. That's, you get the A, congrats, here's $5. A father gives his daughter candy for cleaning up toys. Again, same thing. You clean up the toys, here you go. And that does kind of come into operant conditioning, where you have the response, which is the action. Why? So that you get some sort of reward. You get the stimulus. So clean up toys, get candy. Do well in class, get $5. Do my homework, good job, son. So that's where that positive reinforcement comes in. Negative reinforcement, again, this will still increase the likelihood of behavior in the future. So this occurs when a certain stimulus is removed after a particular behavior is exhibited. And you'll see what this is here in a second. This should not be thought of as punishment. Okay? Punishment is a little bit different. With negative reinforcement, you are increasing behaviors, whereas punishment is decreasing behavior. So negative reinforcement is increasing the likelihood that a certain behavior will occur again. So what are some examples? Bob does the dishes in order to stop his mother's nagging. Okay, I know I've done the dishes, I've done the laundry, whatever, because I just don't want to hear it anymore. And it's my fault because I should have been doing stuff in the first place. But I get sidetracked and do other stuff. I'm sure you guys do too. But yeah, at some point in time, all right, I'm just going to do this just so that I don't have to listen to this. For me, growing up, it was having to vacuum the stupid cars. I was not a big fan of the cars getting vacuumed, just because the vacuum that I had, it was horrible. I would pull the hose in order to bring the vacuum closer, and the vacuum would fall over. The wheels were broken, and then the stuff would just fall out everywhere. I hated that thing. But I would still go vacuum just so that my dad would kind of get off my back. And that was negative reinforcement. If I didn't want my dad on my back all the time, I just did what I was told the first time, and then I didn't have to worry about it. Natalie can get up from the dinner table when she eats 2 bites of her broccoli. Now, negative reinforcement. So I'm going at the dinner table, or I can avoid eating even more broccoli. Joe presses a button that turns off a loud alarm. Every morning, why do we have alarms? You are negatively reinforced. If you set any sort of alarm or timer, you are designed to turn that thing off. I kind of let mine go for a lot longer than probably other people in my household would want. I know it's going off. I just don't care. It doesn't bother me that much, but it does bother other people in the household, and that kind of gets under their skin a little bit. But pressing a button that turns off an alarm, that's negative reinforcement. What is punishment then? This is more of a consequence that immediately follows a behavior, and we want to stop that behavior from happening in the future. There are 2 types of punishment. The first one is positive punishment, and then we have negative punishment. And positive punishment is basically administering something. You're giving them something as a punishment. Negative punishment would be taking something away that they would want. So positive punishment, presenting an aversive consequence after an undesired behavior is exhibited. Basically, aversive basically means something that they don't want. You're giving them something that they don't want, and now they have to deal with that. A child touches a hot stove and feels pain. Sometimes the punishment is self-serving. You kind of did it to yourself. I remember when I was really little, my dad had the old type of coffee pot. They didn't necessarily have the Keurig stuff, but the old school coffee pot where if you touched this hot plate, it was super hot. I was like 3 or 4 years old, and I wanted to see what was up there. And I reached up on top of the counter and put my hand on that. My dad said he's never heard such screaming. My hands blistered up. They put it in cold. guess what I never did again? I was punished. I learned my lesson. So positive punishment, you don't like pain. Pain is administered. Guess what? I'm not going to do that again. That hurts. All right. As somebody that's a little bit taller, growing up, I kept hitting my head on low cupboards. Well, after numerous times, I've learned not to lean over a certain way because when I stand up, I'm going to hit my head. These chandeliers, you probably can't see, but the chandeliers, I hit my head on this every time I move this table forward because I'm not used to it. But I've hit my head enough now that, I've endured pain and I've hit my head quite a few times that I now am more careful with that. A person eats spoiled food and gets a bad taste in his or her mouth. That is a type of positive punishment. Again, you didn't necessarily have anybody give the punishment. It's just you kind of know that in the future I need to make sure that make sure that food isn't spoiled past the expiration date or anything else like that. So we have that. A negative punishment. A negative punishment is when a certain reinforcing stimulus is removed after a particular undesired behavior is exhibited. And that's the removal of something. So this happens on the playground. I'm not mentioning any names or anything else like this, but a child kicks a peer, a fellow classmate on the playground, and now they are removed from their favorite activity. They kicked a kid on the playground. Now you can't be on the playground anymore. You kicked a kid in baseball, in basketball. Now you're pulled. You're having to sit on the bench. You are removed from the activity that you like. A child gets poor grades in class and they get their Xbox taken away. That's a negative punishment. You are removing something that they enjoy in hopes that their behavior of getting poor grades will stop. And you're hoping that they'll get better grades in the future. Steps to discipline. And this is always easier said than done. But, for instance, if you are a parent in the future, the most effective thing that you can do is use positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement will go the longest. It'll get you the most out of the desired behaviors that you want, but it's also the most complex because sometimes what you think is a reward for good behavior, they don't necessarily like it. So the second thing is negative reinforcement. And then the third thing is to administer punishment. Punishment does work, and sometimes it is necessary to do this. If I take my daughter to the Grand Canyon, my daughter Allie, when she was 3 years old, I'm not going to give her rewards and punishment. I'm not going to necessarily use positive reinforcement for not walking along the edge of the cliff. I don't really have time for that. I'm not going to have a discussion with her as she's running towards the edge of the cliff and then say, "Now, Allie, if you walk by me, I'm going to give you some candy." I don't have time for that. So her punishment would be she's got to hold my hand, and after a while, I'm using negative reinforcement. I'm holding her hand, basically trying to prevent her from jumping off the cliff as a 3-year-old. And so I never really got to positive reinforcement with her. I was using negative reinforcement. She knows that she's not going to jump off the cliff or whatever to her doom at the Grand Canyon because I now have a hold of her. So now you're going to watch a video clip from Big Bang Theory. I will use this show a couple times to show various clips, but look for the different explanations of positive and negative reinforcement, punishment, and kind of see what happens, and we will have a discussion here in class when this is over.
Finished?
Well, thank you. How thoughtful. Would you like a chocolate?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Oh, sorry, Sheldon. I almost sat in your spot.
Did you? I didn't notice. Have a chocolate.
Thank you.
You're here a lot now.
Oh, am I talking too much? I'm sorry. Zip.
Thank you. Chocolate?
Yes, please. Oh, hey, Kim. Yeah, you know what? Hold on. Let me take this in the hall. You'll never guess who they got to replace you at work.
Okay. I know what you're doing.
Really?
Yes. You're using chocolates as positive reinforcement for what you consider correct behavior.
Very good. Chocolate?
No, I don't. Sheldon, you can't train my girlfriend like a lab rat.
Actually, it turns out I can.
Well, you shouldn't.
There's just no pleasing you, is there, Leonard? You weren't happy with my previous approach to dealing with her, so I decided to employ operant conditioning techniques, building on the works of Thorndike and B.F. Skinner. Yet by this time next week, I believe I can have her jumping out of a pool, balancing a beach ball on her nose.
No, this has to stop now.
I'm not suggesting we really make her jump out of a pool. I thought the bazinga was implied. I'm just tweaking her personality, just sanding off the rough edges, if you will.
No, you're not sanding Penny.
Are you saying that I am forbidden from applying a harmless, scientifically valid protocol that will make our lives better?
Yes, you're forbidden.
Bad, Leonard. You know, using positive reinforcement techniques, I could train that behavior out of her in a week.
No.
If you let me use negative reinforcement, I can get done before we go to bed.
You're not squirting her in the face with water.
No, of course not. We're talking very mild electric shocks. No tissue damage whatsoever.
Forget it.
Oh, come on. You can't tell me that you're not intrigued about the possibility of building a better girlfriend.
I'm not. Penny's qualities, both good and bad, are what make her who she is.
You mean like that high-pitched, irritating laugh?
Yes.
You wouldn't prefer a throaty chuckle?
You're not changing how Penny laughs.
No, that would be incongruous. No, I was going to lower the whole voice to a more pleasing register.
Sorry, guys. That girl is freaky.
Come again?
Freaky.
Freaky?
Yeah, freaky.
Have a chocolate.
Thank you.